Hey everybody, this one is called Supreme Law of the Land, and that's talking about the Constitution. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, actually, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I have provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. There's four types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. That's true. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military-industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you could call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government is not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So anyways, governors like Abbott are issuing their edicts under their military dictatorship to ensure their property, you, is safe. So I think you ought to recall Abbott. Anybody but Abbott. Get his butt out of there. Executive orders are not law. Executive orders are color of law. Executive orders are equivalent to regulations, and regulations are for government property. Color of law. Color means an appearance, a semblance, a simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real. A prima facie or apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality, a disguise, or a pretext. Colorable. That which is in appearance only and not in reality what it purports to be, hence counterfeit, feigned, having the appearance of truth. Color of law means the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right. Misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law and made possible only because the wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state is action taken under color of law. Under U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, it says to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So, in other words, United States is unconstitutional in the states. And that's what they're doing to you, folks. This is National Mutual Insurance Company, the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of the Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, that's military dictatorship, folks, that's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. So, again, it's unconstitutional. International law rule. State statutes are national, not federal. Adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction. That's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only the statutory but the common law of a state. State and federal venue discussed. The civil law is effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction or federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws. So all of those state codes are actually federal. And this is taken from Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Report of Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President June 1957, and that's pages 158 through 165. So where the dots are, there's things are missing. So the point being is that, again, all state statutes are actually federal, and they're actually national is what they are. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They formed a part of the public debt of the United States. That's U.S. Supreme Court again, Juilliard versus Greenman. Now, again, that's only applicable in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, District of Columbia. Article 6, Clause 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So it doesn't matter what the state constitutions say or the state statutes say. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. This is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, 48 Stat 337. As used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. Gee, that sounds like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. Gee, that sounds like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And it's a felony to violate your rights under the color of law. 18 U.S.C. 242. Whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects any inhabitant of any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States shall be fined or entitled under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. And it's a felony to conspire. So when you go in there and you say, that's a felony for you to violate my rights under the color of law, and they say, well, I'm just doing what I told. Well, now they're telling you that they're just committing another felony. Conspiracy. Conspiracy to violate rights under the color of law under 18 U.S.C. 241. If two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the constitutional laws of the United States, or because of him having so exercised the same, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned to not more than 10 years or both. So conspiracy gets pretty serious. Article 9, an amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. That brings in all unlimited common law rights. At common law, we have unlimited rights. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statute is required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people. So then if it's written law or statutes, then it's not for freemen, is it? Think about it. As general rule, men have natural right to do anything which their inclinations may suggest, if it be not evil in itself and in no way impairs the rights of others. Under Article 1 of the Libre Code, see, it's all military dictatorship, but again, that's all unconstitutional. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. Again, that's unconstitutional. Matter of fact, that's international law. Law of war is international law. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the commander-in-chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. So, again, martial law hasn't ceased. But again, all of that's unconstitutional. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, which refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. See, old Abbott there is issuing his executive orders because he wants you to be safe. That's evidence of the military dictatorship. That's color of law. That's a felony. There's the New World Order slave flag. The New World slave flag, everybody. That's for slaves. If you're a property, you are a slave. That's what a slave is. A slave is owned. A slave is property. Over 1,000 years ago, Arabs discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouths broke their will and individuality and depersonalized them. It made them submissive. That's why they imposed on every woman the mandatory use of fabric over her face. Then Islam turned it into the woman's symbol of submission to Allah, the man owner of the harem and the king. Modern psychology explains it. Without a face, we don't exist as independent beings. The child looks in the mirror between the ages of 2 and 3 and is discovered as an independent being. The mask is the beginning of deleting individuality. This is well planned out and thought, and it's a military medical dictatorship, and they're enslaving you, getting you used to it. So all you brain dead idiots out there that are running around with face masks on, enjoy your slavery. There's 3 kinds of martial law. There's full martial law, where a declaration of martial law is issued, troops put on the street, used only during wartime, used on a foreign country or when actually invaded by a foreign power to put down an armed rebellion. There's martial law proper, law of the armed forces, when a captain tells a private what to do and it's enforced by court-martial. Martial law rule is the law of necessity and emergency, allows the domestic use of martial law powers. It's used during times of peace and can continue for centuries during a military occupation. So that's what we're on right now, is martial law rule. And that's taken from U.S. Supreme Court case Ex parte Milligan, which is quoted in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. The Trump book is now available. There's the front cover. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. For too long, a small group of our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government at the cost of its citizens. Washington flourished, but the insiders refused to share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but allowed our jobs to leave and our factories to close. Not anymore. And that's taken from Trump in his 2016 inaugural address. In Trump, a true American patriot or not, Glenn Fern and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. You can order the book from Amazon.com or my website. It's $30 plus shipping. I prefer you order from my website. Amazon.com does not provide autographed books. If you want the book autographed, order the book from my website, but don't forget to let me know what you want the autograph to say. Do you want to know the origins of the deep state and who's behind it? It's in the book. Do you want to know why it's called the Trump administration? It's in the book. Do you want to know what an administration is? It's in the book. Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? It's in the book. Do you want to know who owns Congress? It's in the book. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? It's in the book. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? It's in the book. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's in the book. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? It's in the book. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended, to enslave everybody. Congress gave governments permission to screen for low intelligence for their code enforcers. Congress granted plausible deniability to their order followers so they can rape, pillage, and murder as much as they like, and then claim good faith immunity. Congress mandated fluoride in the drinking water to dumb people down for their concentration camps. Congress created the Roman cult Sestake Trust as a mechanism to enslave everybody, collateralize their so-called debt, and sell everybody into slavery. Congress mandated everybody register their births to compel everybody into their slavery system. Congress created administrative law, as in the Administrative Procedures Act, based on fraudulent fictitious contracts as a mechanism of slavery. You volunteered. Congress created all sorts of prisons to facilitate their military dictatorship and their slavery agenda. Congress gave the president the power to make war without congressional approval as a mechanism of slavery all over the planet. Congress mandated their so-called real ID for their slaves to fabricate evidence of their slaves for their bar members' presumptions. Congress has given pharmaceutical companies immunity for their poisonous vaccines. Congress has authorized naked short selling on Wall Street. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. This is supposed to be Jefferson's seal, and it's also said that it might be the obverse side of a seal that Jefferson proposed for the United States. I don't know. A society whose citizens refuse to see and investigate the facts, who refuse to believe that their government and their media will routinely lie to them and fabricate a reality contrary to verifiable facts, is a society that chooses and deserves the police state dictatorship it's going to get. And that's Ian Williams Goddard. But I actually say that that's true, but that's a satanic philosophy. And the reason I say that is there's a Roman law maxim that says, let him who wishes to be deceived be deceived. And that is satanic. It's deception. And in Leviticus 19 and 14, it says, thou shalt not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind. And that's essentially what they're doing, is they're putting stumbling block before blind people, people that don't have a clue about what's going on. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there then that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel. And that's Revelations 2 and 14. And Romans 14 and 13, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. When the rights of the least of us are violated, we are all diminished. And so that's all Satanism. And so while I don't necessarily disapprove of the fact that, I won't say that. I'll say that I realize that they're going to get a police state dictatorship. I don't believe that they really deserve it because they're ignorant, they're clueless, they're a bunch of idiots. You are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And that's what they are. They're Satanists. But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and the whoremongers and the sorcerers, that's pharmaceutical drug pushers, and all idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Revelations 21 and 8. Some corporations claim they can refuse service if you do not wear a face mask. So the question I have to ask to them, are you have to follow regulations? You don't have to follow regulations then, is that correct? All corporations are property of the government. When you incorporate into the government. Under Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution, it says the supreme law of the land. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the other property belonging to the United States. So if you're subject to regulations, you're property of the United States. You are a slave. And you damn well better follow their codes and rules, because I'm going to hold you to it. You can't sit there and claim that, oh, well, we're a private company. Well, BS. The only private company is maybe a mom and pop sole proprietorship, and there ain't too many of those. In the Canadian Control and Ownership Determination Act, it's very similar. It says that own means subject to the regulations. And then in Section 3 of the Government Corporation Operation Act of Canada, it says every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agent of Her Majesty and right of Canada. So they're property, they're owned by the government. I don't care what they want to say, and they damn well better follow They're guilty of felonies, and they can't sit there and say that they can refuse service to people, because they can't. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Martial law is the public law of necessity. Necessity calls the force. Necessity justifies its exercise, and necessity measures the extent and degree to which it may be employed. That necessity is no formal, artificial, legalistic concept, but an actual, factual one. It is the necessity of taking action to safeguard the state against insurrection, riot, disorder, or public calamity. What constitutes necessity is a question of fact in each case. And that's Frederick B. Weiner, A Practical Manual of Martial Law, 1940. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. Tyrants try and argue, oh yeah, we have to do this. And the slaves say, oh yeah, you have to do this. And that's William Pitt's speech in the House of Commons, dated November 18th, 1783. It's still going on today. The action of Congress and the passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of government, and the Legal Tender Clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. Gee, that sounds like necessity, martial law. Juilliard versus Greeman, U.S. Supreme Court, 1884. But U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, says no state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold or silver coin, a tender in the payment of debts. And so there's no lawful money in general circulation. And so if there's no money, then they can't hold you to anything. That's why the Form 1020 works so well. Money means a medium of exchange currently authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government. The term includes monetary unit of account established by an intergovernmental organization or by agreement between two or more countries. And that's Texas Business and Commerce Code 1.201B24. And that's international law. Okay, remember, that's Texas, that's the Uniform Commercial Code, the Texas version of the Uniform Commercial Code. The Uniform Commercial Code is regulated by the UNIDROIT, which is the international, they're about 100 yards from the Holy See in Rome. It's the Unification of Private Law, that's what it's called. And it's international law, and it's unconstitutional. And if you're, unless you want to be in international law. A party, as distinguished from a third party, means a person that is engaged in a transaction and made agreements subject to this title. So what they do is they assault you with this until you object to it, and that effectively assaults you with the Uniform Commercial Code. And that's Texas Business and Commerce Code, but that's the same as the Uniform Commercial Code. Governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private corporate commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, and securities checks is concerned. For purposes of suits, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. So think about it. If you use them, then you don't have any freedom or sovereignty. You're putting yourself under international law. International law is not sovereign. There's no such thing as a sovereign under an international law. Governments lose their immunity and descend to the level of private corporations when involved in commercial activity, enforcing negotiable instruments, as in fines, penalties, assessments, bails, taxes. The remedy lies in the hand of the state and its municipality seeking remedy. Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result is an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction of Congress. But where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, etc., etc., etc. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellard of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. And another cite from that book, the 14th Amendment is an extension of national military powers presently used in a municipal character and enforced by municipal laws stretched far beyond their original limitations and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. That's why you want to bring up Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, because that just neuters them right there. That nips it in the bud. Causes and necessities taking up arms. This has been going on from the beginning of time. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and the exercise of the law martial. So martial law supersedes and replaces common law. That's like going from international law versus common law. That's the two differences. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. That's military dictatorship, folks. Rebellion against tyrants is obedience to God. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the prime cause of the revolution, and yet we're back in the same situation today. But the United States shall guarantee to every state of this union a republican form of government. And so, again, that's the supreme law of the land, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government, and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. That's Dred Scott versus Sanford, U.S. Supreme Court. A republic is not the law of nations. The purpose of a republican form of government is to shield we the people from international law. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress, independent, outside and independently of that instrument. And that's Downs versus Bidwell, U.S. Supreme Court, 1901. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America, found in Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation, 1781. And yet, if you get a U.S. passport, it doesn't say the United States of America. It just says United States of America. So the passport is international law, and it's the unconstitutional municipal corporation. Passport defined. A passport is a written document given to a person or persons by a commander of belligerent forces authorizing him or them to travel unmolested within the district occupied by his troops. Passports are issued by the State Department or similar office in other countries to diplomatic agents and others entering or traveling in foreign countries, which are the same general character as those issued during war. The latter should, when practical, have a photograph of the bearer attached. And that's taken from Rules of Land Warfare, 1914 edition, Passport, Safe Conduct, Safeguards and Cartels, Chapter 7, Section 4, Article 276, page 100. Oh, and look at that, a Federal Reserve note, and it says, the United States of America. Actually, that's not a Federal Reserve note, that's a silver certificate. At common law, only gold and silver were legal tender. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. If you want common law, you have to get away from international law. Discharge is international law. When you use Federal Reserve notes, you don't pay anything. That's why that Form 1020 works so good. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. Discharge falls under the law of nations, which is international law. If you want to learn about the Form 1020, watch the video. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries, and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the fake money, the military script, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. A requirement for a promissory note is a promise to pay. Gold certificates and silver certificates were promissory notes because it said right on them that you could go get some gold or silver. You can never pay a debt with the Federal Reserve note. It can only be discharged with limited liability. Check out my other videos, the Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman Cult playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 7, Do-It-Yourself How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service in the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts, Canada Border Pigs playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections playlist. General Orders 100, Liber Code, Article 37. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans. Gee, that sounds like a Federal Reserve note. To billet soldiers or appropriate property, especially houses, lands, boats, or ships, and churches for temporary and military uses. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Anything that can be used as a medium in exchange, as long as we agree to it, it's called barter. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group, Sovereignty International, is being deleted. My Yahoo private group called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I've got a library profile. I'm moving away from this YouTube because of their censorship. And so it's going to be all on library. My Patreon is Sovereignty International, and I've got a MeWe group also. Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended for the purposes of enslaving everybody. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. U.S. Supreme Court, Colgate versus Harvey. So prior to the 14th Amendment, U.S. citizenship was derivative and dependent upon being a state citizen first. And after the 14th Amendment, it turned it upside down. It's called criminal conversion. And that's Congress the tyrant. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Every taxpayer is assessed to a trust having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's a summary from Henry Bollins. Sad will be the day when the American people forget the traditions and their history and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born from the throes of armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. Roger Sherman, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Well said. There's a bunch of cowards today. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. This is 31 Stat 1432, the D.C. Code, an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia. Actually, it's now they call it United States Code, by the way. They want to be deceptive, okay? It's all intended to be deceptive. The legal estate to be the cestui use. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. And the set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, that's the Roman cult, folks. To be bound in conscience to account to assesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. That's codified now in 15 U.S.C. section 44 definitions. A corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, or so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And then it basically goes through the same definition again, but it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And that's a sesticate trust, the second definition. Congress shall have power to dispose and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the other property belonging to the United States. That's the sesticate trust. That's Article 4, Section 2. Banks are international law. The law of nations is international law. Military dictatorship is international law. The Uniform Commercial Code is international law. All codes, rules, and regulations are international law. Forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military despotism. It makes it so that courts presume that you do not pay a debt. It makes it everybody into paupers. It makes it so the judges sit there and play stupid. Paupers have no rights except what they allow you to have. And if you don't say something and it's not said, and the judge will sell you into slavery in a heartbeat. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. And debt is the money of slaves. Federal Reserve was set up in the insurance laws of the United States. Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. Congress created the Federal Reserve in the middle of the night. The single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Lawful money does not equal Federal Reserve notes. Lawful money does not equal bank notes. Lawful money does not equal forced loans. Lawful money does not equal discharged debts. Lawful money does not equal international law. That's why my Form 1020 works so good. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. So all you cowards out there that are caving in to all of this, you're Satanists. That's what you are. Matter of fact, Mark Passio even said that 70 to 90% of Americans are practicing Satanists. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Don't forget to follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steam, don't forget to vote and make your comments. There's the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already been clicked, or otherwise it'll be red. The arrow is pointing at the bell. The bell hasn't been clicked. You click on the bell and a pop-up will come up and it asks you what kind of notifications you want to be notified about. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, for merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. That's international law, folks. Attorney General's opinion, February 3rd, 1857. That's why they have to pass statutes for common law offenses, but those are all international law. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. That's international law. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They'd be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's exactly it. That's found in the causes and necessities for taking up arms. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. There is no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its commander crimes. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Military dictatorship is martial law. Under military dictatorship, there is no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes, which are edicts for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates democracy. Under a military dictatorship, you have a democracy. Democracy is international law. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. Website has 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only, $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in an attorney. I'm in a liar. But I can tell you what I would do and where to find the forms. Under what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, as my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. So if you want to buy a subscription as a donation, it's a modest donation, there's no doubt about it, but everything is helpful and appreciated, and a whole bunch of people chipping in a little bit adds up to be a lot. Some of my exclusive content is Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration, Criminal Complaint Training, there's several on those, Lawsuit Training, there's one and there'll be more, other training, depending on if it's something I can do or haven't done already, I'm open to requests. And then there's Northeast Private Information Share videos. I've had this last May, that one was canceled because of the coronavirus hoax, but there's other ones, and we're having them every 6 months. There's going to be one last week in October, first week in November, and then we'll probably have one again in May. April, I should say. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free. Link to my videos on my website. All exclusive content will be available on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. And my Patreon is Sovereignty International. They've been telling people for decades that we're in a democracy. Do you think it's an accident? I'm sick of YouTube and Google censorship. Over the next few months, I'll be moving away from Google and YouTube. I've already dumped Chrome for Brave. I'm moving my videos over to Library. There's the invite link. I would suggest you go there and sign up, because once I delete everything off of here, that's going to be where it's at. I can't put it at BitChute because they don't allow files more than half a gig in size, which eliminates a lot of my files. Anyway, so there's limited places, and then there's limited places I can go. I can go to Brighteon, but Brighteon I just don't get a lot of hits, I'll tell you. Anyways, my new book is available. I just published my book. It's available on Amazon and on my website. Amazon does not provide autographed books. I do provide autographed books from my website. My website goes to PayPal, and if you want to pay by another method, contact me privately. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com, and my website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And there'll be a link under this video as well. Now, do you want to know the origins of the deep state and who's behind it? It's in the book. Do you want to know why it's called the Trump administration? It's in the book. Do you want to know what an administration is? It's in the book. Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? It's in the book. Do you want to know who owns Congress? It's in the book. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? It's in the book. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? It's in the book. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's in the book. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? It's in the book. In reality, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. And the War of Independence was caused by taxation. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders, that from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment whatever payable on any of the colonies or provinces or plantations in North America or West Indies, except only such duties that may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. And that's in 1778, George III, Chapter 12, 1778, 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. 2 years. And so, again, the War of Independence was caused by taxation for raising a revenue. They were trying to raise a revenue. They wanted to do business. They wanted to do commercial transactions. That's why Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. See, he didn't want to do business, so they killed him. That's the price, and that's going on today, folks. Taxes cause the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. Think about it. They're forcing you to work for them for nothing. That's slavery. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. This is U.S. Supreme Court, McCullough versus Maryland. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extend are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be profound as self-evident. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. If you are a subject, you are a slave. If you are paying tax, you are working for nothing. You are a slave. Tax is an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject. An excise, a tallage. In public law, taxation signifies the system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. Some general principles of taxation have said to be that, one, that the subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities, that is, in proportion to the revenue. Okay, revenue as in corporate profits, which they respectively enjoy under the protection of the state. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists what is called the inequality or equality or inequality of taxation. And that's the Dictionary of English Law, Sweet and Maxwell, 1959. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword, the other is by debt. And that's John Adams, 1826. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer. He's a bought and paid for clerk, not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not in a discretionary capacity. It is the accepted rule, not only of the state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they are described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for a clerk for the agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature or otherwise, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature, and their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. When there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya, and that's a quote from the federal court citing Bradley versus Fisher. That's U.S. Supreme Court there, and which is citing 10 Coke 68, which goes back to the 1500s. A judge wears a military uniform. A judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. Everything they do is a fraud and a nullity. There's the whores right there. Judge works for the state. Prosecutor works for the state. The pig works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by the employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party, and since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws, the state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. But in fact and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in the state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution under the so-called 14th Amendment. That's a summary taken from United States versus United Mine Workers of America in 1947. U.S. Supreme Court. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party's been duly convicted. They put on a show trial and they sell you into slavery. And so the 13th Amendment authorized slavery, is what it did. The so-called 13th Amendment. He, the prisoner, has, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren, the children of Israel, maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among us. There is great evil going on amongst us right now with these bought and paid for whores, and they should all be put to death, quite frankly. If it was up to me, I'm glad it's not up to me, because I'd stretch the necks of every one of them. Oh, I'd give them a trial, give them some due process, make sure they got due process, and then stretch the neck. Deuteronomy 24:7. Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. So it doesn't matter what anything else says, this Constitution is the supreme law of the land. We can have a benevolent dictator or a tyrant dictator. Obama was a textbook tyrant. Pelosi gets up and tells the House, we can't read this bill until after we approve it. Gee, that sounds like a military dictatorship. That sounds like a tyrant. Lindsey Williams' story, when Trump got elected, Lindsey Williams said that the elite told him that God intervened. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution. Well said. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the losers. And that's true, and that's what's going on right now with the communists or the Democrats. No, I meant the communists. We have governor tyrants, we have Congress tyrants, we have county commissioner tyrants, we have city tyrants, we have county sheriff tyrants, we have judicial tyrants. Not all county sheriffs are tyrants. Some of them are not. And so to give credit to the ones that have said that they refuse to enforce any of this coronavirus stuff, and that's good. So it's time to get unplugged, folks. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. All executive orders or regulations for property of the government and therefore a color of law. Color of law is something that looks like law but isn't. It is a felony to violate your rights under the color of law. They can violate your rights as long as they can claim good faith. Tell them it's a felony and have witnesses. America needs God. It's time that we started turning to God, because this is one of the first things. Remember in the book of Revelations it says there's going to be plagues and pestilences. Well, folks, what do you think is going on right now? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Exodus 20:3. The New World Order require that you worship government. The New World Order is satanic. This is going on in China right now with the Falun Gong, and what they're doing is they won't fall down and worship government, and so they get their organs harvested. This is a Wikipedia article about the Falun Gong. I'm not going to go through and read it, but I would encourage you to go and read it, because that's exactly what's going on. And it's an abomination is the only thing I can say, and that's what's coming here if we the people don't wake up. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Under the New World Order, you either renounce any other God except government, or they'll try and kill you. It says that right in the book of Revelations. In China, they're persecuting Christians, Falun Gong, and anybody that fails to worship the government. It's well known that they're harvesting the organs of the Falun Gong. So it's time to repent, folks. Time to get unplugged. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Congress shall have power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So that's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. We already talked about that. This is a document that one of the guys in my group files, and he's had great success with it, according to him. Anyways, he calls it a counterclaim default judgment, and it's to the clerk, and so and it's got a case number and a date, municipal court, name and address, and it's got the name, common law, plaintiff, state of whatever, counterclaim wrongdoer, state of Texas, and then care of prosecutor Stickum, or the present prosecutor. It's Stickum. I like Stickum better, but you better call him by his real name or he won't get it. Anyways, and co-defendants who are colluders. It's by Smith Charles, Rocky Mountain High. Court of Record, common law, was established before the creation of the Constitution and recognized in organic law documents. This is pretty simple. Draws from the following documents of the verdict: jurisdiction violation, United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Clarifies the limited jurisdiction of the United States and associates State of Texas counterclaim wrongdoer, limited by territorial jurisdiction. Finding plaintiff, State of Texas, counterclaim wrongdoer, operating outside limited jurisdiction, having no authority. Plaintiff, State of Texas, counterclaim wrongdoer, operating as a rogue government. United States and Associates, plaintiff, counterclaim wrongdoer, has been declared a private corporation for violating the charter. Congressional Record, March 1993, Volume 33. Currency is now issued by a private corporate, United States, therefore without charter authority, using brutal force, fraud, deceiving the courts, the people, and the claimant. Specifically, leaving the plaintiff, State of Texas, counterclaim wrongdoer, with no legitimate authority for existence, finding the plaintiff a counterclaim wrongdoer with dishonor and demonstrates hatred and disobedience for Charter, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 17. Common law, citation for speeding or any other traffic incident is not a crime or injury. In violation of common law, Article 193, bills of attainder. Jurisdiction penalties, by the same charter it declares the penalty for that invasion of jurisdiction. Article 3, Section 3, United States Constitution has treason against the people, and specifically against Mr. Smith. Charlie Smith, not Mr., that's a title of nobility. Charlie, Court of Record, common law finds the plaintiff, State of Texas, counterclaim defendant wrongdoer, despising its origin, defying territorial jurisdiction, dishonoring the law of the land, while committing many actions of injury, crime of treason, and sedition, as described in the affidavit attached and claims above. The default judgment will be writ that the cases be dismissed for invasion of jurisdiction. Writ the plaintiff, State of Texas, pay damages of X amount of dollars plus counselor at law for X amount of dollars. Writ that the plaintiff, counterclaim defendant, State of Texas, to reply to this verdict within 30 days or request an extension or be found in default judgment. I guarantee you they'll never reply. A copy sent to U.S. State of Texas Prosecutor Succum, who is designated representative for the State of Texas in this matter, under penalty of perjury, counselor at law, representing Joe Blow, Court of Record, common law, under penalties of perjury. Anyways, he says that he's had some pretty good success with this, and I'll bet he does, because it makes a lot of sense. And it cuts to the chase, and it's real short and sweet. The thing about these judges now, if you send them anything more than about like 10 pages, I mean, they won't even read it. And I know I've sent stuff that was like way more than 10 pages. And I don't think they ever read it. Anyways, so U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it's time we started using it and started bringing up some of these arguments, because I think that this is like really powerful. I haven't tried it myself. Right now, I've used the Form 1020, and they don't want to talk to me anymore. But you notice here, it talks about it here. Let's see, it talks about the money. There's no money. Currency is now issued by a private corporate United States, right? It's currency, it's not money. Every word in here is important. This guy's pretty brilliant. Anyways, thanks for watching. Supreme law of the land. We gotta stick to that, because that trumps everything, and that trumps these state statutes. I don't care what their state statute says. Okay, they're all really DC statutes, and that's why you cut to the chase with Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, because that's where DC is supposed to be, over there between Virginia and Maryland. Anyways, thanks for watching. Good luck. Keep me posted about anything that happens. Take care. See ya.